can I introduce Sam to our meeting? Sam is a fellow Rotarian and is a member of the Rotary Club of, I was going to say Loudon, but London. Um, Sam's talk this evening is around how communities can help with the human trafficking and how we can stop this horrible situation that seems to be happening in the world. Um, Sam's a founder member of her organisation, and she is a survivor of human trafficking herself. So, without any further ado, can I hand over to Sam um, to give us her input for this evening? Sam, over to you.
So, let me just start a little bit with why I am so passionate about this issue. I was 16 when it happened to me. I was a kid who was particularly socially inept. I much preferred my books and data to any sort of socialization, which did not make me very popular amongst the other kids, and I was pretty ruthlessly bullied. Unfortunately, this led to my wanting to commit suicide, which I attempted and was unsuccessful, but felt that it had brought so much shame on my family that I decided to leave home. I was 16. It took about 48 hours to become one of the statistics. I got a job in what I thought was a nightclub. Turned out it was not, it was a brothel. The end of the first night, they said, "There's something wrong with the take on the till. We need you to come upstairs so we can sort it out." And that was that. I was trapped there for several months, and I actually ended up getting out of there with the help of a customer. Then my parents were able to locate me. They helped me. And unfortunately, I actually ended up trafficked 3 more times. One, labor trafficking, selling encyclopedias door to door. And so you can tell how old I am. But secondly, I was then sex trafficked twice more. So I was particularly sold at large sporting events like the Super Bowl and other large conventions, etc. So this is one of the biggest reasons that we work large events, sporting events particularly, but also conventions and film festivals and other big events where human trafficking is a problem. On average, large sporting events will have about a 15 to 25% uptick in labor trafficking on the way to the event and then sex trafficking during the event. And the crisis has been sadly just really growing, and people think it doesn't happen in their neighborhood. But in Scotland alone, there's been more than 900 cases just in the last year. Overall, in the UK, we recorded over 23,000 victims of modern slavery in 2025, which was up from just under 5,000 in 2024. So you can see the growth is quite rapid. 30% of those referrals were children. So unfortunately, in Scotland alone, we had over 500 young women who were under the age of 18 reported for sex and labor trafficking. We do find that mostly women are sex trafficked more, and boys and men are labor trafficked more. But together, they make up quite a sad number of people. And in Scotland, the NRM analysis shows us that 74% of victims were actually sex exploitation victims. So obviously, we do have a problem already, and that's only being exacerbated by the coming Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. So we hope that we'll be able to help with that, because the thing about human trafficking is it doesn't care about your nationality, your age, your socioeconomic status, or gender. It used to be that human traffickers really preyed upon those who were in economic stress. But today, unfortunately, grooming happens to everyone. And I was not a kid who was in socioeconomic crisis at all. My dad was a CFO of a large multinational. My mom was a lawyer. I was not in financial need, but I was deeply bullied and therefore deeply isolated, making grooming really easy. And that is what we're seeing more and more of, especially as our kids live out their lives out loud online. We see so much more. In fact, now more than 75% of immediate connection to traffickers is coming from online. And many of you know that Meta alone connected 1.4 million children last year with their predators. A third of trafficking victims in the UK are children, and 1 in 5 of those is often a foster care child. So we definitely have some work that we need to do. And so first and foremost, let's talk about what the definitions are, because sex trafficking is force, fraud, or coercion, right? So most often they're induced into commercial sex work because they are either coerced, and we have different kinds of traffickers. So the coercion is different. We have our interfamilial trafficking, where a family member is trafficking a child. We have our guerrilla traffickers, where they are kidnapping and forcing. And we have our CEO traffickers, who make them think it's a good business deal. And most common, what we like to call Romeo traffickers, who are the ones that make them believe that they're the ones who are going to love them forever, and therefore this is just something they need to do for them. And it's obviously very easy for those sorts of traffickers to create a Stockholm Syndrome situation. And these kids are then very much reliant upon the trafficker for food, shelter, etc., making it very hard to break the bonds. Labor trafficking is also a big problem. We're seeing more and more of it. In fact, IPEC just published a report about the construction industry and how bad labor trafficking is in the UK in construction. It's now become one of our top 5 areas. Agriculture is another huge one. And all of these are quite happening in Scotland, right? So we've got lots of building happening. We've got quite a bit of agriculture going on. Manufacturing is another big one. And of course, the beauty and retail industries, we're seeing more and more, as well as restaurants and hotels. So for labor trafficking, we find that oftentimes the victims are forced into this and then told that they will get paid, but often are not paid at all. Or they're in debt bondage from having been brought over or put into involuntary servitude type situations where they're sort of told they have to do this if they want the roof over their heads. And the cases that we're seeing are considerably brutal because they're forced through fear and intimidation, but sometimes just straight up violence as well. So we're seeing more and more that the victims are beaten and starved, and a lot of other very unpleasant things happening to them. It's now a $236 billion industry globally. And some consider it over $1 trillion if you add all the pieces together. But it's become the number 2 fastest growing criminal industry in the world, second only to drug trafficking, and it surpassed arms trafficking. So this is quite a serious problem now. It's always been there, but we are growing at such a fast rate because it is so much easier to traffic people online. And we're seeing so much more recruitment happening for forced labor and the ability to recruit people online. We're seeing the grooming of children and women for sexual exploitation starting online. And organ trafficking is still a problem. Of course, we in the UK are mostly the recipients of these organs, not generally the ones giving them up. But nonetheless, it's still a proportion of the trafficking that we're seeing. we've got 25 top industries, and these are not in any particular order, but you will find them in your neighborhoods, right? And that's the part that we want people to completely understand. It's that this crime is hidden in plain sight. When you go to work, you probably will find these people in your daily business. If you are, getting your nails done, if you're getting your hair done, if you are seeing construction going up around you, if there's logging around you, if there are massage places around you, there may be trafficking going on because these industries are very commonly used, and yet people don't know how to recognize the signs. So it goes completely unnoticed. And unfortunately, this leads to very few prosecutions, and therefore the crime is easily grown. So when you are in your local beauty salon, massage place, hair place, barbershop, what are you seeing, folks? Are the people serving you able to speak English? Are they able to talk to you? Are they able to answer questions when you address them, or does someone answer for them? Because we find that we're seeing a lot of Asian women used in this way across the UK. We've still got a lot of solicitation going on. It's moved very much more online, but at truck stops, rest stops, and some parts of different cities, we are still seeing your typical outdoor solicitation. If you see this going on in your area, please, please report it. Residential sex trafficking, especially of minors, is one of the most common ways that children are sex trafficked. So, is there a home in your area where people are coming and going at all hours of the day and night? Is there an Airbnb or a Verbo or a Booking.com house where lots of people are consistently booking it for short periods of time, but a lot of traffic is going through it? These are signs worth reporting to your local authorities because, unfortunately, especially when it comes to child trafficking, they are using these sorts of facilities and for a week or two at a time and then moving them around, keeping them very hard to track down because of the consistency of that movement. And if you know the Airbnbs or similar in your neighborhoods and you know their owners, then please help them keep an eye out. We do train Airbnb hosts on this with the help of Airbnb, and we do want to train other organizations. So, if you know folks who are renting out their properties for short-term stays, then we'd love to help them understand what to look for and how to prevent this from happening in their homes. Of course, domestic work has been one of the key areas in which labor trafficking has thrived for decades, right? And we see live-in housekeepers, nannies, cooks, personal assistants, often working without their passports, often told that they'll be here for a short period, but turns out it's a long period. We were recently speaking to a young lady who was brought over from Brazil. She was a mechanical engineer in Brazil. She was coming to do her master's. She thought she was getting a house share situation where she would get lowered rent in exchange for babysitting. And turned out he wanted a bride and tried to force her to marry him and was not paying her for the work that she was doing. And fortunately, she was brave enough to call her Brazilian embassy, who then reached out and we were able to assist her. But the number of folks who do not reach out for help is astronomical. In fact, we expect that only about 1 in 10 actually feel like they have the agency to reach out for help because they're afraid that if they do, they will themselves be in trouble. So whether that's immigration trouble or legal trouble of other sorts, they're just afraid. We're sadly finding that pornography is on the rise. we've seen a 28,000% increase in child pornography created by AI engines that are using real children's photos. So, first and foremost, folks, try to keep your kids offline, and their pictures, right? Please put smiley faces, blur their faces, and if at all possible, stop posting them, because they are easy targets for folks to then use their faces and images to create sexually explicit materials that turn into videos and images that they are then used to be sold, and your child is now basically victimized in that way without being physically victimized, but it's just as problematic. So, things to consider. We definitely do trainings around this. So, if it's something that would be helpful in your community, let us know. We're seeing an uptick, especially as cities are having a tough time with restaurants and food service. And so, if you're in a restaurant and you're seeing people there who don't seem like they have the right equipment on, who don't seem like that they're dressed for it, or if you're seeing people, sleeping in areas of the restaurant, these are all red flags. Please, please report it. And we'll tell you where at the end you can make these reports too. A lot of the beggars and peddlers that you see out by the stations and out in the cities are very oftentimes part of begging and peddling rings, and they're being forced to do it. So please keep an eye out and talk to them. Ask them a little bit about their story. If they're there regularly, ask some more, because more often than not, the regular ones are being forced to be there on a daily basis. And things to sort of, offer that will help you understand what's going on is, if they're saying they're raising money for the night's accommodation, ask them, if you were able to pay their accommodation directly, could you pay it to the hostel they were going to stay in? And if they say no, then they're probably part of a ring where they're being forced to do it. So, because most of the folks that are begging for themselves, if you offer them a way to pay for their night's accommodation, they'll very happily take you to the place that they plan to stay and let you do that. And it's usually between 15 and 20 pounds a night. But if they say no to that, then they've probably got a quota on their head that they need to meet. So, that's just an easy way of seeing, are they really there on their own doing this, or is it likely that someone is forcing them? We're seeing more and more where agricultural workers are being brought in from all over the place to farming businesses, and they're given such horrific living conditions. They're denied just, I think the pigs might eat better than the people sometimes. And unfortunately, they are overcrowded, often forced to share beds, and you've got 8 hours of sleep here, the next person comes in, and they're just rotated so that they're working almost 24/7. And it is quite one of the largest human trafficking cases was 400 people that were rescued from agriculture in the UK. So we know that it's an ongoing and problematic issue. So please keep your eyes open if you're around farming. Things to look out for are, do they have the right footwear? Do they have the right headgear? Do they have the correct gloves and safety gear for the type of work that they're doing? And if they don't, then that should be a massive red flag, right? Construction, similarly, are the folks on the construction site properly attired to be on the construction site? Do they look of the right age? Because we're seeing a lot of young men, 15 to 18, being forced into construction labor and being paid very little, if anything at all, and oftentimes do not have the correct safety gear necessary to do the work. So no steel-toed boots, no hard hats, no proper gloves, or sometimes not even the tools that they need to do it. So if they've got a lot of cuts and bruises, if their hands are bleeding, if their feet seem to be not properly equipped or have injury to them, then these are also things that you're going to want to consider and report. Obviously, sexual servitude's been around quite a long time, and we're seeing it within the health and beauty industry. So when you're going to your nail salons, your hair salons, make sure that you are paying attention to the surroundings and you are talking to the folks there and understanding how they got there. We're seeing more and more labor is used for hospitality work. So hotel housekeepers, front desk, maintenance folks, bell staff. And again, they're often sending money home and thinking that they would have lucrative wages, but instead they have debt bondage. They've got to pay back what it cost them to get here. So they're often very much controlled. Petrol station workers are another one that we see quite a bit of. Landscaping. And it's all similar, right? The best thing to look for is, do they seem properly attired for the job that they're doing? Do they seem like they want to be there? I mean, these are just key issues to consider. We're seeing a lot more forced drug deals and drug smuggling as part of trafficking. So, definitely things to look out for. And unfortunately, we're seeing it more in entertainment, sports. This has been very well documented across the US. But we're sadly seeing some of it here in the UK as well, not at the same levels. But we are definitely seeing where jobs are expected for models or photographers or other sorts of roles like that, but are actually they're going to end up being trafficked into the sex industry or labor exploitation. So it's something to consider. If you have young people in your lives who think that they're going to move to London for a modeling job or something, please don't let them go alone. Please make sure that you've checked out the agency. But oftentimes things will check out online. They'll look like legitimate, fashion companies or other things like that. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is that it's easy to fake that kind of, check. But then once they arrive, they're actually not given the jobs that they thought they were coming for. So, always keep our young people safe by not letting them start their new jobs alone and checking in with them every day for the first few months as they have the new jobs, just to make sure that it is what they expected it to be. Because oftentimes within a week or a month, it turns very different. Commercial cleaning services. If you're in your offices late at night, are your commercial cleaning workers actually meant to be there? Because a lot of times they are easily exploited because no one's there to see who's doing the cleaning, right? So oftentimes these folks are forced labor exploitation workers, and they're cleaning for very little pay, if any at all, and living in really horrific conditions. We know in the middle of the country, there's a huge problem with manufacturing. Know where your clothes are coming from, check on these things. We can share with you sites where you can check to see how many slaves are making your garments or where the supply chain came from, so you yourself can take a look and understand. But we know that a lot of imported materials, especially coming out of China, are in fact state-sponsored slavery. So if you're shopping on sites where the prices feel like it's too good to be true, it is, guys. It definitely is too good to be true. You should not be able to buy a cubic zirconia ring for £1, or buy a pair of trousers or a shirt for £2. These are not reasonable prices, right? So applying some thoughts to things, because even with economies of scale, there's just no way that could be, the material could be properly purchased, the workers sewing it together could have been properly paid, and the shipping could have been done correctly in order for this to be this inexpensive. So please do think about that as you're shopping on a lot of those online sites. Carnivals are another big one. So, as those pop-up carnivals are coming to town, I was at the Notting Hill one last year and was quite disturbed at the amount of clear labor exploitation that was going on. Look at the food stands, consider the game operators and the ride operators, because a lot of times this is forced labor. The forestry and logging industries have been long known, along with the energy industry, oil pipelines, all that sort of thing. So, think about the workers doing these jobs and be thinking about, do they look as if they belong here? Take the time to get to know them, talk to them, and learn a bit more, because oftentimes it will be clear to you. What can we do about this? Because that was a lot of information on what it looks like, but how do we address it, right? So number one, we want to get more of this information out into the community. So, if we can get more ambassadors to get out in the community and teach this curriculum so people can learn how to recognize it and what to do about it, because prevention's better than cure. And the more awareness we have, the better we can tackle the problem. We've got to stop the demand, number one. And we've got to empower victims to not fall prey to groomers. And by educating everyone on the issues, it really helps that happen. We do a lot of identification using online technologies. So if you're a tech person or you are an aspiring tech person and you'd like to learn how you can help us identify these ads online or report things to Meta or Instagram and other places, we would be happy to teach you how, so you can be part of the solution. Here in the UK, we have a call center that operates 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. People can call in tips or can call for assistance. We do regular outreach. 1 in 10 homeless people will be labor or sex trafficked while they're homeless. So we spend a lot of time in the homeless communities, giving them hygiene kits, providing meals, and helping them to understand how they can prevent themselves from being victims. And we try to provide, basic needs, so that they don't have to not have food and therefore have to turn a trick to get a meal, kind of thing. Our rehabilitation program empowers transformation. So once they've been through the NRM system, we can help them to get new skills, to get emotional, spiritual assistance, to have opportunities to go through vocational training or go to college, and sort of reintegrate back into a healthy world for them. So this was actually one of our very first survivors. We've been going 12 years in the US, though we've only been in the UK for 2, well, not quite, but it'll be 2 in October for us. And she came to us at 16. She had been raped by her mother's boyfriend. And when she had told her mother about it, her mother threw her out, and she ended up living on the streets. She was living outside of Burger King, and a gentleman 3 times her age asked if he could buy her some Burger King. Then he took her to get her nails done, and then he moved her in to his home, and then he turned her into a sex slave. And he impregnated her twice, and then he sold those children as well. So she had a 2-year-old and a 7-week-old whom he actually recorded the rapes of and was selling them online for now $10,000 a click. She's safe now, and her children are safe also, and the family's reunited. She works as a phlebotomist, and she is doing really well. Unfortunately, there are still quite a lot of lingering issues with the children. And you can imagine that a 7-week-old being raped would immediately have quite a lot of medical issues. He's now 5, and he still has a lot of issues related to that, both physical and mental. And this is the challenge, right? Where prevention is better than cure, because if we'd been able to intervened earlier, we might have been able to prevent some of that. However, we're happy to be able to at least provide the rehabilitation. Unfortunately, it does take a village, and we definitely need that village to happen so we can equip institutions to understand how they can stop this in their own supply chains, in their own businesses, how hospitals can identify victims earlier. Many of you may have seen the campaign with Liam Neeson. It had about 81 million views. You can find it on our website. And it will give you the 8 key areas that you can look at when identifying human trafficking victims and what that control might look like. So feel free to.
Hi, I'm Liam Neeson. Human trafficking is the fastest growing illegal global business, generating $150 billion each year. It is the second largest criminal industry in the world. Almost 25 million people are trafficked each year, and 1 in 4 victims are under the age of 18. Most of us would imagine that human trafficking involves someone being kidnapped, moved across borders, and exploited by strangers. This can be the case, but most people are trafficked within their own countries and cities, and coerced into exploitation, often by people they know. During high-profile events and major sporting events, with the influx of hundreds and thousands of people into the hosting cities, exploitation can increase. People are trafficked for forced labor and sexual exploitation, regardless of age, background, or location. Traffickers may threaten their victims with violence or blackmail, take advantage of their vulnerability, or promise an opportunity for a better life in order to control them. Here are some of the signs to look out for. Victims may be easily startled, agitated, or afraid, unsure of where they are or lack official ID, unable to explain injuries or possessions, may have strange markings, brandings, tattoos, have unexplained hotel use, be accompanied by a suspicious companion. Children can be dressed up to look older than they are. If you're watching this and you are being exploited, or you think you have seen something, then say something. Join our campaign. Together we can end exploitation and human trafficking. Thank you.
So what we would love to get the word out, especially as the Commonwealth Games get closer, is what to do if you suspect trafficking. So Unseen runs a 24/7 confidential hotline that you can call. You can report it to stop the traffic on the Stop It app. You can report it to us on our website or by phone or text message. It is better to tell us what you suspect and give us the information to investigate than ignore it, folks, because the more information we get, the better our data becomes, right? And the more information we have, the better we can piece it together. And your little extra tidbit of information can sometimes crack a case wide open. So it's much better to tell us whatever you see and let us and law enforcement work it out versus take the I'm not going to get involved opinion, because it's got everything to do with you folks. These are your neighborhoods, these are your communities, and we want to help make them safer. So please do, take a picture of this, and please, please, please tell us, because if you see something, please just say something. It will really help. If you would like to volunteer, we would love to have you. We really need more volunteers. And so you can volunteer on our website. And if you would like to provide financial support for us to get the ad campaign out there for prevention, then we would very much appreciate that also. I'm happy to take questions now.
That was a lot of information. I have to say it certainly opened my eyes, my perception of human trafficking was not something that I was thinking happening on our own doorstep. However, I think it's made me perhaps be an awful lot more aware. Coming from when I was working childcare sector, obviously in the UK, Sam, we have lots of regulations for certain areas of employment, etc. I'm again, maybe it's the wrong assumption, that a lot of this trafficking happens within small private companies where they're perhaps not adhering to the regulations that are required. Am I completely wrong?
Yeah, we put out a list every year called the Dirty Dozen list, and it's the top 12 companies. And this year's list, the top companies were Meta and I've forgotten the other ones off the top of my head right now, but obviously Meta was one of the worst because of Amazon was on the list. Yeah, I can share the list with you, but a lot of them were tech companies, a lot of them were social media related companies because they have the worst challenges, but also retail companies, right? But people who've been on the list before, Nike, and so many clothing companies, Nestle, right, for chocolate and cocoa, and lots of coffee companies. Chiquita Banana was on there for agriculture and bananas. We've seen a lot of meat packing companies. So you would be surprised. There are no companies that are like 100%, it couldn't possibly happen here. There are a few, right? I mean, the Patagonias of the world, and there are some really good B Corp type companies. There's some amazing sustainable companies in England. One of the best sustainable fashion designers is Deploy. They do an amazing job. They have a showroom in London. And not just of the sourcing of the material and the making of the clothing and all of that. And even though they're importing it from other countries, they are absolutely staunchly aware of how their supply chain is created. And those are the people we want to help, right? And we want to support. But unfortunately, Nike has been trafficking children for as long as Nike's been around. And they're consistently on the bad list because they're consistently doing terrible things. And so, just stop buying it, and that will help quite a lot. Right? Having that awareness of the types of companies, because it's large and small.
Yeah. So I suppose that's about some of these big conglomerate companies are not doing their due diligence to ensure that that is not happening from their suppliers. But then that has, I suppose, financial implications to them. So it's
Meta literally put in their financial report, right? They literally wrote it down in their report saying, yes, we did connect 1.4 million children with their predators. However, it was, too lucrative for us to stop doing it. And then the U.S. took the report and they got a $357 million fine. But I mean, for them, that was still a drop in the bucket, right? They paid the fine and moved on. It hasn't changed anything. In fact, they've now stopped having committees who look at these things so that if consumers don't report the ads, nothing's done about it, right?
That's quite scary, really, when you think about it. Does anybody else have any other questions for Sam? If you do, just raise your hand.
I have one.
Yes, Al.
We're having the World Cup here, mostly here. Have I seen anything about this problem on television? I have not. So the fact that I'm completely unaware that it's going on is okay. Well, I don't know, but I haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
And the second thing for us is we have ice. You know about ice. And if somebody raises their hand like, I'm being mistreated, I'll probably grab them and send them overseas. So that's going to make it even harder to get
so in the U.S., we do have law to allow for human trafficking victims to get either a T visa or a U visa, which is called a trafficking visa. And so there are mechanisms, Hal, for human trafficking victims to not be deported. Now, we ourselves last year had 8 trafficking victims pulled out of our safe houses and deported, moms and kids. So
Right.
it doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. I'm not going to say that it's 100% amazing, but we have worked on it. And this year, we did pass the laws to allow survivors to have their records expunged, which will also help, because if their record is expunged, they're no longer criminal, so they won't fit the criminal statute for being deported. So that will help keep them. So there are things that are happening that are positive. Obviously, nothing is a perfect system, and there's still a lot of work.
Yeah, but I haven't seen the ads here in New York about this being a problem.
Yeah, it's problematic. We are trying. It's very, the biggest problem is the cost of the media buy.
Right.
And New York City is extremely expensive to purchase any kind of ad time, a billboard of one, 30-second spot. And organizations like ours are just having trouble finding the funding to put the ads out there. And even when we come together and do it together, so if it's a penalty, there's about 15 of us coming together on the World Cup, we still can't afford the bigger ad buys, and that's the challenge.
Mm. Okay, thanks, Hal. Bill?
Yes, Sam, as Joyce said, that was quite frightening, enlightening. And yeah, I think personally, I think it's the disturbing thing I've heard via Rotary in many, many, many years. And now, a couple of things. You're attending the Commonwealth Games, because that's how I met you and your colleague. Not the Commonwealth Games. I didn't qualify this year for the sprints, so that's another story. But as you know, we are recording this now, and to me that is a vehicle. A copy will be going to yourself, but we've all got connections. Now, whilst unfortunately I hadn't realised that today was a district assembly, I wasn't at it. But again, I want to say that I intend contacting our outgoing district governor and see if we can put something on News for Clubs by way of a link to our YouTube channel. But are there other groups in Scotland, for example, that you could use this recording to actually send, or do you already have that? Are you sending out what you've got there?
Yeah, so folks, we are new to the UK. We're even newer to Scotland. We could use introductions to, all local organizations and also corporations, right? If anyone knows anybody at Scottish Power, I'd very much like to talk to someone at Scottish Power, because obviously energy is a big issue when it comes to trafficking in Scotland. We, are going to do an in-person event at the Royal Bank of Scotland, July 31st, which we'd love to have any and all of you attend. So we can send you out the details of that. That is International Day Against Trafficking of Persons, and we're going to do a talk around, and the Commonwealth Games will be in the middle. So it will be something that we definitely want to have people come to. So, if you can spread the word, we'd love to get it out there around that. We have some online events coming up ahead of the Commonwealth Games that obviously we'd love for you to get your friends and family and colleagues to attend, because as I said, the most important thing we can get out there is the awareness. Because as many of you have said, you learned something today, and we'd like to get that into the hands of as many as we can, because the more people who understand the problem, the better equipped we'll be to have people who want to help solve it.
Yeah.
How about the schools? Sorry, Joyce. How about the schools?
Not yet.
That's what I want. Yeah, senior schools. That's why I thought that we've all got connections there. But I think that answer would be as best to ask you. Are you sending any information? For example, I'm involved with the Church of Scotland. Others here are as well. Is it going out to the churches at all?
Yeah, so we just did this week a mailing to churches. We haven't yet had a response, but if you know people at your church or know local churches, then it would be very helpful to give us a name and email address so we can get information to them, because obviously the list we bought is quite small, and it's not that accurate because we had a lot of bounces. So any sort of information like that is super helpful, guys, because we're not while we did just open our offices in Glasgow, we have just a few volunteers, right? So we need more people to help us get the word out, and just giving us those intros is huge.
Yeah. Have you spoken to Police Scotland?
No. I don't know them even, so let me write it down.
I mean, obviously, that to me, to try and get your training program inbuilt into the training that new police officers do at Tully Allen. Information that you've gave us tonight would be extremely useful. So maybe, for you to get in touch with Police Scotland and talk about it, to get it inbuilt into their training would be a tremendous start, especially where you've got something like the Commonwealth Games that's coming up. It's probably too late to do anything to help that. But, if they were more aware of some of these things that you've raised tonight, would be extremely useful.
Yeah, we definitely do that. And I've been working with a couple of other survival leaders in the UK. We do law enforcement training in other parts of the world, and we did it in Paris and Italy ahead of the Olympics. We need to understand the British system a little bit better before we can sort of give them as relevant information as we would want to. So we are still developing a UK curriculum for law enforcement. But yes, it's something that we do in Canada and the US and Paris and Italy presently. But and it's something we'd love to do in the UK. We just need to improve our curriculum because it's a different system, right? So it's a codified system, it's a different system, and we need to better equip ourselves. But we are working with the University of Law in Moorgate in London to try to improve that curriculum.
Yeah, and I think what you need to be aware of, the laws in Scotland and England
are different.
Yeah.
In the past, I actively worked in war violence against women and forced marriage, and I contributed quite a lot while the bill came on and the law was enforced. I was a Glasgow Life staff until I retired. What I can do for you, Sam, I can email management who are hosting Commonwealth Game and let them know if you can present them with this presentation, if that's okay for you.
Please, absolutely, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and then I think they have a direct liaison with the safe community. This is to do with the Strathclyde Police. They have a section of safe community where they meet. So hopefully with the liaison, they can propagate or send the message. I think it's vital we do that to keep the ball rolling at the moment.
Please do, yes, keep in touch and refer anyone you want, because that's the thing that we really need the most, right? We need to make connections locally in Scotland in order to be able to better affect this, not just for the Commonwealth Games, but long term as well. Like, we don't plan to close after the Commonwealth Games, right? We plan to be there long term. I plan to be up in Scotland at least once a month for 5 6 weeks a month.
And Scottish government also has got a website called Your Right Scotland. You will find the training for domestic abuse, training for intervention, and for teachers in school on partly there are stuff such as FGM, human trafficking, child slavery is it's mentioned on a very smaller scale. So I will try and dig out maybe if all
we are getting ready at the moment. We're about to launch on the Open University's website for free learning. We'll be launching training programs there over the next 6 months. So you'll see a lot of training come available that people will be able to get for free from the Open University Open Learning website. So for these different, so for teachers, for medical employees, for doctors, for nurses, etc., and also like just for service workers and things. But one of the things we're trying to do is obviously raise the funds to have better curriculums. So that's on our, so if you know of places that might want to underwrite such training, then, you know, we'd love to write for grants for that. So if you know of companies that might be willing to sponsor that, that would be amazingly helpful also. But yes, the Open University's agreed to let us put it up there free of charge, but we still need to build the curriculum and put it out there.
Anybody, anything else that they want to ask Bruce?
Sorry, can I just ask a quick question about the organ trafficking? Where do these operations happen in Scotland, if you know they're happening?
Yeah. So most of the time, they are done in private clinics. So because obviously NHS hospitals will not entertain such a thing, but in private clinics, it is possible to procure organs from other places. There are like literally organ brokers available around the world to help procure organs. Obviously, organs are quite complicated, right? Because you've got to have the right blood type and the right cell match and all the rest of it. But so therefore, there are organ brokers that broker those deals. But like I said, we're not the ones who lose our organs. We're the ones who buy the organs for the most part. So, and generally, private clinics are doing the transplantations. It only takes one rogue doctor to be doing that, right? And oftentimes after hours. And there are just lots of ways that it can be done where it goes under the radar, because everybody's being so well compensated that no one's talking about it.
Okay, Sam, can I just, on behalf of the club, give you a huge thanks for coming along this evening. I think I can honestly say and speak on behalf of everybody here tonight that we've all had our eyes opened. I think it's one of these emotive subjects that you think it's not happening in my doorstep. And I think tonight you've certainly raised that awareness with us all that, yeah, it can be happening within your own community, and that we need to be more vigilant. And perhaps your talk this evening came at quite a poignant moment, as you've mentioned about the Commonwealth Games coming up in Glasgow, and I'm quite sure all of us will be either in Glasgow or perhaps going to events or whatever, and hopefully that will your talk tonight has made us all more aware, and if we can stop some of this happening. And I hope it's been useful for you tonight as well, Sam. You've made a couple of good connections, which hopefully will help you to progress the good work that you're doing in Scotland and the UK. So can I ask everybody to just show your usual appreciation in the usual way? Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.